Somebody still talking. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وإمام الخلق أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum. It's good to be with you again. Some of you have been attending these. Do I need to have this on the microphone? I think.
It's fine here.
Sorry?
It's fine here.
Fine. You don't need me. That's good.
The people in the back can hear.
That's it. Good to have you again. And this semester we will have 3 of those monthly educational sessions. This one, which will be on prophets and messengers of Islam. And the second one will be on reform. And in that specific one, we will have a comparison between Catholic reform and Islamic reform. How it happens, what happened in the case of the Catholic Church, and how it happened, what happens in the case of Islam. It will be me and a priest talking about that. I think you will find that very interesting in terms of historical perspective and future possibilities. And the third session which I think you will find very interesting, something in the Muslim community we shy away from, gender and sexuality. From an Islamic perspective, we'll talk about all kinds of things, from marriage to women, men, to intimate relations, to Islam's stand on all kinds of issues in that regard. So if you are planning to get married, you have to be there. If you are tired of your spouse, you have to be there too, and for help you there. My interest today is not to give you a lot of stories, but rather a lot of overall paradigms of how to understand the Islamic perspective on prophecy, prophets, and messengers. For those of you who are from the Islamic, or who have or come from an Islamic background, you might find that also interesting, because often we speak about stories and we move on. We read stories and we move on. We fail sometimes to understand that those stories in the Quran or in Hadith have to be seen in light of the big agenda of Islam, the big perspective of Islam, the big interest of Islam, what Islam is trying to do. Because there are so many details in the Quran about those prophets and messengers, and unless and until we understand what is Islam trying really to have you do, you will never understand why do we have these details there. And believe me, if you don't understand those paradigms, big pictures, you will never understand the details, or you will misinterpret the details. Another thing I'm going to do before I move forward is, in the second session tonight, after the prayer, what I will try to do is to walk you through specific readings from the Quran, where you will find some of those stories of prophets and messengers, and I will make specific comments as you read some of those verses to put everything in perspective. The third thing is, what I try to do today is to speak, number one, about the overall perspective of messengers and prophets in Islam, and speak about specific names, specific individuals, then compare between that and Prophet Muhammad, upon all of them be peace, to see, is there a difference between a Prophet Muhammad or a Prophet Moses or others? Or is it the same? Muslims make a distinction sometimes, a distinction that must not be made, And non-Muslims also make that distinction sometimes, or misunderstand Islam because they think that Muslims do or don't make a distinction. So I want to compare between both Prophet Muhammad specifically and the rest of the prophets and messengers. I hope that's clear as to what we will be doing tonight. Those of you who have been coming to my sessions, I always start with this. According to Islam, this is the greeting of all the prophets of God. According to Islam, whether it was Moses or Jesus or David or Muhammad or Solomon or Jonah or Noah, all of them have always used the very specific and same greeting, Assalamu alaikum, or in Hebrew, Shalom, or Shalom aleichem. And for those of you who come from a Jewish background, Shalom, in Arabic, Salam, the same word, Alaikum in Arabic, Aleichem in Hebrew. The very same word, by the way. The Kha sound in Hebrew is K sound in Arabic. So replace Kha with Ka, you end up with the same word. Salamu alaikum, Salamu aleichem. The same word, peace be unto you. So we'll start there. The thing that unifies all God's messengers and prophets, the very same greeting. This greeting, according to Islam, is the greatest greeting humanity ever came to know. From Adam to this very time of ours, from Eve and Adam to Muhammad through Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Mary. All of them, and many others in between, have come to know and preach the same greeting. Now, we know about those stories of prophets and messengers from Quran and from Hadith. There are specific surahs in the Quran that are named after some of those prophets and messengers. There are some stories about some prophets and messengers in the Quran, but there are no surahs named after them. We'll go over some of them in a minute. And a lot of the stories about those prophets and messengers may not be included in the Quran, but will be included in Hadith. If you put together the story of Jesus in the Quran, without any interpretation, you may come up with about 20 pages, double space, 12 sides. But if you include the story of Jesus that comes from Hadith, you will end up with about 350 pages, single space, 10 sides. Many of you may not have even known this, because as Muslims, we read only the story of Jesus in the Quran. And we move on thinking that is the story. We read the story of Musa in the Quran, and we think that is the story. But if you read Bukhari, if you read At-Tirmidhi or Nisa'i, if you read Muwatta Malik, and many of these books of hadith, in every one of them there is a chapter called Qasas al-Anbiya, the stories of the prophets, where you have all kinds of references to Jesus or Moses or others. A book that just came out recently that I would advise you to read, you will find it on Amazon, called The Muslim Jesus, according to Hadith, that you will find interesting. You read it? It's quite interesting. You find a lot of data there, some of which you will not find anywhere in Christian writings, zero. Some of which you will find in Gospels that have not made their way into the Christian Gospels as known today. So some of those you will find in the Gospel of Thomas, but you will not find in the four Gospels of Matthew and Luke and John and Mark. You see where I'm coming from? Or you will find them in the Gospel of Mary or the Gospel of Barnabas, such as Jesus speaking in childhood, miracle. You will not find that in the 4 Gospels, but you will find that in the Gospel of Thomas. But you'll find that in hadith material as well. Many of the references to many of Islamic scholars, Sahaba and Tabi'in in Islamic history, by the way, this might be shocking to many Muslims here today. Many people will say, well, Imam al-Hasan al-Basri said, Imam Sa'id ibn Musayyib said, are actually references to either Jesus or Moses. That those Sahaba or Tabi'in, for those who don't know, Sahaba is the Arabic word for companions, disciples of Muhammad, sort of, and the first generation of Islam. Tabi'in is sort of the second generation of Islam. You know, many of those Tabi'in would usually make the reference, say, well, according to Prophet Muhammad, Jesus said, or Abraham said, or Moses said, okay? But historically, it was not narrated as such. It was narrated as if Sa'id ibn Musayyib said, or as if al-Hasan al-Basri said. When actually you study and take your time to do scholarship on those, you'll find these to be statements made by either Jesus or Moses, mainly. And usually there's a lot of wisdom in those narratives. A lot of it is attributed to Imam Ali. Like, for example, according to Nahj al-Balagha, Imam Ali said there are three days are three. The day that has passed, the day that will come, and the day in which you are. The day that passed is a day that has already passed, so don't worry about it. You cannot control it, it's over. And tomorrow, you never know if you're going to get to it or not. And today, of which you are in control, so avail yourself of it and make use of it in a way that it pleases God. This is attributed to Imam Ali when it's a statement of Jesus according to hadith material about prophets. And there's a lot of stuff in here that one can find. Imam Ibn Kathir has a book that is also in English called Qasas al-Anbiya, the stories of the prophets. Some of which are authentic stories about those prophets according to Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace. By the way, for those who don't know, Muslims always say, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, may the peace and the blessings of God be upon Muhammad, every time we say Muhammad. But I feel sometimes in English it's too much to keep saying it again and again, so I'm going to quit it, but in my heart I'm saying it. So for Muslims, don't be offended. For non-Muslims, if you're requesting it, don't be offended too, so be happy with it. See, I interrupted myself, myself. What I say?
The book is in English.
Qasas al-Anbiya. Some of, I would say, maybe 35% of the stories attributed, or the narratives to those prophets in Ibn Kathir are authentic, according to Islamic scholarship of hadith, have been studied, evaluated, and one can say that Prophet Muhammad for sure said them. A lot of the stories in Ibn Kathir's book of Qasas al-Anbiya, or the stories of the prophets, cannot be authenticated and cannot be justified, and sometimes one would really never know where they come from. Some of which we know where they come from, they what is called in Arabic Israeliyat. These are Israelite stories, which means these are stories that the Jews living amongst Arabs and Muslims used to say, meaning they come from either the Torah or the Talmud or Midrash or Jewish writings or sayings, have made their way into Islamic literature, were narrated by Muslim scholars and became a part of the Islamic tradition of those prophets. But one would not really attribute them to Prophet Muhammad as if Jesus did or did not say them, we wouldn't really know for sure, except that was really studied and evaluated in that regard. These are specific surahs in the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, the cow or the calf. Also nicknamed, has a nickname, Surah Bani Israel. the surah or the chapter on Bani Israel, the children of Israel. Why? Because most of that surah is about the story of the Jews, very similar in the Bible to Exodus. So a lot of the verses that you would read in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, in Exodus you will find in Surah Al-Baqarah or the cow, or Surah Bani Israel. It is 286 verses. I forgot the exact number, but almost 220 of those are about the story of Moses. This is why it's called the story of Bani Israel, or the chapter of Bani Israel, because a lot of the verses is really about Bani Israel, about Moses and the Israelites living in Egypt, what happened to them there and how they left, what happened to Moses, to Aaron in Sinai, and that's what the story is. Ali Imran is Surah 3, the second largest in the Quran, made of 200 verses. That talks about Jesus and his family, talks about Mary and her own birth, and her own pregnancy of Jesus, the labor which he delivered Jesus. It talks about the miracles of Jesus. It talks about some of the things that Jesus had to go through in his own da'wah, in his own ministry, in his own life, before his life ended on earth. Then you have Surah 19, Surah Maryam, named after Maryam, the mother of Jesus. And it talks about, in Surah Maryam, you have references not only to Maryam, not only to Jesus, not only to the miracles of Jesus, but it goes on, and we will do some of that in the second session tonight. It talks about Moses, it talks about Isaac, it talks about Ishmael, it talks about David, it talks about Solomon, it talks about so many of those figures. The story of Yusuf or Joseph, or in English, even in Arabic. In Arabic it can be read as Yusuf, Yusuf. You can say Yusuf, E with kasra, or you can say Yusuf. Again, Arabic, many people don't know this, by the way. There's only one sound for it. Yusuf, Yusuf, Yusuf. And all are legitimate readings for the word Yusuf. The story of Yusuf is quite, I think, maybe, I think I'm right to say that it is the only surah in the Quran where you have the only chapter, the only surah where you have one story of one prophet from its beginning to its end. Where the story of Maryam has the story of Maryam there, but not the entire surah is about Maryam. Yusuf, the entire surah is about Yusuf, the entire story. Ibrahim, you have the story of Ibrahim, but not the entire story of Ibrahim. The entire story of Ibrahim can be found in here, some of it in here, because as a part of the story of Moses, you have where Moses comes from. So you have some of that story here. Muhammad, there are references to Muhammad in the story, in the surah of Muhammad, but not much about Muhammad and his story. The same thing with Noah. Most of the surah is about Noah, but it's very small, the surah anyway, but not every verse is about the story of Noah. Al-Anbiya is the Arabic word, the plural for Nabi. By the way, for those of you, again, of Jewish background, Navi, Nevaim, Muslims to know that too, and Jews amongst you. Can you put the light on for a second? I want to ask Muslims, I want to ask you, what is the name of the Jewish scripture? In Islam, the Quran. In Judaism, what's that? Injil? No, Injil is for the Christians. Torah? Torah?
It's the Torah.
Torah? some of you, I'm not going to ask, I know you know. Some of you. What's the Jewish scripture name? Or what it's called? Torah?
I think the Torah only refers to part
Torah? Who has now another? I don't know about your religious preference. What's the Jewish scripture name? What is it called?
The Torah or the books, but I don't think that's the name of the scripture.
Great. You see, even sorry, but from Christian background. You see, many people don't know, not even Muslims. What's it called? No. The Talmud is the writings on the Torah. You tell me. to really know. Okay, wow. Okay. No, the Jewish scripture is called the Tanakh. The Tanakh. Tanakh. Yes, Tanakh. Yeah.
The Quran is called the Quran?
No, in the Passport Torah, in Judaism.
You asked in the Quran.
In the Quran?
That's what you asked, Imam.
If
That's why
I'm
everybody said Torah.
I'm sorry, no. In Judaism, I'm sorry, in Judaism, what do Jews call the scripture?
Oh, how can we know?
I'm sorry. Even with that, who knew this? Who knew it was called the Tanakh? No, you see, it's the same. Okay, I'm not going to go now. Tanakh, okay? Tanakh. Ta, na, three letters. Three letters, okay? Ta refers to the Torah. Na refers to Nevi'im. Navi, the V sound in Hebrew is base sound in Arabic. Nevi, Nabi. Nabi. See the similarity here? So, Ta, the Torah. Then you have Navi, Anbiya, prophets. And you have Baktuvim. What's the Arabic word for write? To write.
Hak.
Kataba.
Oh.
Kataba. Kataba. Tuvim, the V and V sound.
That's like
So
you're
this
right.
is the writing.
You're right.
So the Jewish scripture is called Tanakh because within it you have the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and you have the stories of the prophet, and you have the writings of the prophet. Okay? So now coming back here, Anbiya, the Quranic word for Anbiya, this is why I started this whole thing. Nevi'im, Nabi, Anbiya. Anbiya is the plural for Nabi in Arabic. Okay? Good. You have a lot of stories there, not only one, but so many of them. What all had in common? What is the thing that those messengers had in common? According again, now back to the Quran, back to Islam. Sorry if I made that mistake. No, they're not. What they have in common according to Islam is teachings. So many of their teachings are in common, are similar according to Islam, according to Quran, according to Hadith. Especially in theology, but not necessarily in Sharia. The Quran declares, لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. For every prophet, we have revealed a Sharia. Sharia is the Arabic word for the path. And therefore, the Quran declares that the law that was revealed unto Musa alayhi salam is not fully like the law that was revealed unto Muhammad, is not like the law that was fully revealed unto Jesus, what the Christians call canon law. So what does this say for Muslims? Islam says when it comes to theology, the theology is the same. We'll talk about it in a second in details. But when it comes to Sharia, when it comes to ethics, when it comes to the path to God, there are differences. So for Muslims, we should not expect that the ethics of Jesus' teachings should be similar to the ethics of Muslims or to the ethics of Jews. The Quran is very clear, saying that لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا, for everyone, we have revealed a different body of law, different body of Sharia, and therefore it is natural to have different understandings of that path to God. What I find interesting is that the Quran says, وَلِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا. Who is جَعَلْنَا? It's God. What does this mean, Nazir? God speaks of himself and what he has made. What he has, what does this mean?
What does what mean?
That God speaks of himself, that he has revealed for every messenger his own sharia.
You just explained it.
What did I say? What I was trying to say? You think?
That God revealed, that God causes.
What's the result of that? You think?
That God sanctifies.
Pluralistic.
Yes, that God sanctifies
Different
ways
of living.
Yes.
We don't need to expect, we cannot expect, that's number one. Number two, it is intended by God to be that way. Do you hear that, Muslims? You know what this means? God says, for everyone I give his own way. What does this mean? God wanted it that way. What does this mean? You can't go after people condemning them for behaving in certain areas differently from you. This is what I call according to a friend of mine, he said, this pluralism and respect for it, religious pluralism, is clear in the Quran more than in the two scriptures, Judaism and Christianity. With a very clear verse, for every messenger we have given a different path to God. Islam's ability to enhance, accommodate, and respect, and maybe push for religious diversity. When it comes to theology, the Quran would tend to say that theology was always the same, and we'll come to that in a second. The struggles, all of those messengers of God went through the same struggles. All of them were rejected by their people. This happened to Ibrahim in Iraq. You remember the story when he was thrown into fire? But his people rejected him, belied him. That's what happened to Moses in Egypt. That's what happened to Jesus in Palestine. That's what happened to Jonah. That's what happened to Saleh. That's what happened to Yusuf. Yeah, Saleh, yeah. That's what happened to Yahya. Not me, I promise you. To Yahya, according to Islam. And according to the Bible, Yahya, you know what Yahya ended up happening to? What happened to him? He was beheaded. So I don't want to be like him, you know. I'm not going to go that way, but, you know, Yahya, Muhammad faced the same thing. He struggled with his people, they rejected him. Now, Ibrahim left Iraq. Moses left Egypt. Jesus did not leave Palestine, but he did leave his town. So he had to be expelled from his own town. And Muhammad was expelled of Mecca. He left Mecca. You see this similarity in the struggles. They were rejected, they were belied, they were disrespected, and all of them had at one point to leave, to depart. But why? Why did people reject them? Because their main job was to make people uncomfortable. And that is why they were forced out. Ibrahim did not come to tell his people, you are okay, you are wonderful, you are very moral, very ethical, you are doing right. They were not doing right. So he had to come and challenge the status quo, the social values, the political values, the social system, the financial system, and say this is wrong. He had to come and challenge the way they understood God and their relationship to God. And because he made them uncomfortable, they said, oh, no, wait a minute, get out! So in the case of Ibrahim in the Quran, he was thrown into fire. Moses too. The dictatorship of Egypt, not only Hosni Mubarak, I promise you that, you know, where he said, I am your Lord the Most High. That's what Pharaoh said. And I tell you what you believe, what you don't believe, what you say, what you don't say. And he enslaved the people and made them become as if they were his own commodity. The whole social system, political system, economic system, and religious system was corrupted. And Musa has to stand up and say, no. So is Jesus. He comes to the market and throws everything upside down. And that did not make people comfortable. It did not. He challenged the religious institution. He challenged some of the rabbis. He said, guys, where are you heading? This is not what God wanted. This is not what the Torah is talking about. So he went after not the Jews as a community, but he went after the religious establishment that became corrupted in the name of God. He spoke for social justice. He spoke for women. He spoke for the rights of the poor. Huh? He was told, come here. The Quran says, وَمَكَّرُوا وَعِنْدَ اللَّهِ مَكْرُهُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ مَكْرُهُمْ لِتَزُولَ مِنْهُ الْجِبَالِ. They have plotted against him, a plot that only the devil would be able to orchestrate such a plot. But Allah was aware of their plot too. And Allah is the best of all planners. So God had a better plan for Jesus. We'll go there later. But the idea here is he challenged the Roman Empire, the political system. When he came to the market, he challenged the social system and the financial system, and he challenged the religious system. So he made people what? Uncomfortable. It's exactly what Muhammad did when he came to Mecca. Tribal wars that, according to Al-Mas'udi, that claimed the lives of at least 1,000 every month for tens of years. Women buried alive, no voice, slavery. The political system was built on first class and not even last class. It's like beyond zero class. And he said, wait a minute, what are you doing? So as Jesus spoke against riba, against usury, so did Muhammad within the financial system. As Jesus spoke for feeding the hungry and clothing the naked, so did Muhammad. As he spoke for women, so did Muhammad. So Muhammad was what? Making people what? Uncomfortable. But he also is challenged the religious institution of Mecca. The Kaaba that was built thousands of years earlier by Ibrahim. To worship what? To worship God. And now thousands of years later it had become the center for 365 idols. And Arabs would sacrifice for those idols every day as if they were not God, but the mediators to God. Interesting. Someone had to stand up and say, no, this is not God, this is not religion, this is not the right way to God. So the struggles were also the same. Maybe not in the very, very details, but in so many ways they were. Why would God want us to know this? My sister, my brother, if you want to be a mujaddid, a reformer, according to Islam, if you want to be true lover of these people, if you truly believe in them as Muslims, you have to make people feel uncomfortable. Yeah, of course. Of course. You cannot sit in your home watching TV when women are slaughtered in the name of religion or in the name of politics. You just cannot do that. You just cannot. This is why we have those ties. We cannot claim to be loving Jesus or loving Moses or loving Muhammad and not follow their footsteps. The problem is, sorry for this, as Jesus in the Bible And in hadith material calls so many people hypocrites. So many people have become hypocrites in the East and in the West. As Jesus says in hadith, read that book, Jesus, the Muslim Jesus. There will come a day when those who speak my language, that Jesus speaks in hadith, they will draw near to the rich and shrink away from the poor. They speak for my God in the day, but in the night they work against my Lord. Interesting. Interesting. It's exactly what Muhammad said in hadith, by the way. سَيَأْتِي يَوْمٌ عَلَى أُمَّتِي. There will come a time in my ummah where those who speak my name, after they finish their Isha prayer, they will go to the market to deny my people their rights. So it's the same statement from Muhammad and from Jesus. So what, is Mashai here? Mashai is not here. Tell her that we love her. She's doing this fundraising next week for Malala, the Pakistani girl who was shot, when she stood up in defense of women's right to education. Malala, for me, is taking on the work of prophets. So what I'm saying to you, my young sisters and brothers, you can never be true Muslims. Young, on your way to leadership. If in Georgetown University, in the 4 years you spent here, do not decide to take a specific challenge and challenge it. Whether the poverty of Africa or the extremism in the name of Islam in Pakistan or in Algeria, or the political system that got corrupted and challenged it. You see, what is the challenge that you want to take before you finish college? Say, okay, that will be my fight, the environment, huh? Because I don't want to make people uncomfortable when it comes to the environment. Who watched the movie called, I think I mentioned this before, The Day After Tomorrow? Who watched the movie? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Good, beautiful. Good, good. At the beginning of the movie, if you remember, when you have the scientist who goes to the vice president and tries to talk to him and to the president, please do something. He made people uncomfortable. But they realized later he was right. So what is your task according to this? Okay, so the same experience, very common there in so many ways, shapes and forms. Experiences, whether the experience with the political system, experience with the people, you know, many of these people started very harsh life, you know, very poor, very overlooked. I mean, from Jesus, he was not a big guy, he was not the elite. Moses was not the elite, obviously, in Egypt. Ibrahim was not the elite. There was something about them three. They grew up righteous life. He used to go and pray in the synagogue and read the Torah. So he grew up righteously. So is Moses. So is Abraham. So when it comes to the experience, the same kind of experience. In so many ways, shapes and forms. The details of the experiences may be different, but overall, the same. The story of Noah, the story of Jonah, how in both cases, their people rejected him, their people rejected him, his people rejected him. He suffered and he had to build a ship to sort of flee away from his people. Jonah, you know what happened, and he wanted to flee because he was really tired and sick of his own people not listening to him. Quite the same thing, the same experience. The impact, more or less, is the same. What do I mean by that? All of them ended up creating fellowship, making a difference in their own settings, in their own experiences. It created what I call in the modern 21st century a movement. A movement. You know what I mean by a movement. Can you create in the coming 24 months, Zainab, a movement of not in my name. Muslims saying, not in my name will I allow violence against women. Can we create a movement? Whereas you have 200,000 followers around the world, not necessarily follow you as much as the movement and the impact of that movement in societies. These are the things that you need to start adopting. So this is the impact that was also very, very, very similar. They are all of one path and one family, according to Islam. The Quran is very clear in Surah 2, verse 256. We do not distinguish between them, لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله, that we Muslims do not distinguish between any of these people. They're all God's prophets and God's messengers. They're all sisters and brothers. They strengthen one another. I love it where the Prophet Muhammad was asked, "Oh Muhammad, what is your relationship with those prophets and messengers?" And his answer for me, one of the best anyone could ever give. Can you put the light up, please? Muhammad said, I'm not a good engineer. This is a wall. He's Muhammad, I am, 2 minutes, he said, I am a block, like a stone, in a wall, next to my brothers. He said, each one of us strengthens the one next to him. And if you take one, the wall will be incomplete. So he saw himself completing, not in competition, but rather completion of one another, strengthening one another, because they are brothers, they are sisters, and they are of one family. They confirm each other, like in Surah As-Saf, where it says, Musaddiqan, I come to confirm what was revealed before me in the Torah, what was revealed before me in the Injil, in the Gospel. And fully sinless. And therefore we do not attribute to those prophets and messengers sin. In Islam we distinguish between a sin and a mistake. A sin is an offense against God, when a mistake is a misjudgment in earthly matters. You see the difference here, a huge difference in that regard. That one would need to keep in mind. The last one is that chosen by God, so it's not self-proclaimed task, but rather chosen by God. There are more things that one would say that they are supported with miracles. So according to Islam, all of those messengers of God actually performed miracles. And like in the case of Musa alayhi salam, when he threw his staff and God opened the sea for him. For Jesus, he healed the blind, or brought the dead back to life according to Islam. And for Muhammad, a few miracles like that, but Muslim would say that the greatest miracle of Muhammad is what? In the Quran itself. And we're not going to go even that route tonight. It's not our subject for tonight, how that can be the case. Their message is one. The message of the prophets and messengers. One God, a God who should be adored and loved. But God himself is a God of love. So what comes out of God is love, and God must be loved. So you have lover and beloved. That's the relationship between us and God. One origin. We all come back from Adam and Eve, according to Islam, and Adam and Eve come from dust according to Islam. And therefore, Islam may, in this case, not prescribe to the evolution theory of us having our origin being a monkey. We may have evolved, we may have been lighter or darker, taller or shorter, but we have not come from a different kind of a creature. We have always been human beings. Our forefather and mother are Adam and Eve, both of whom were created from dust according to the Quran. One destiny, we will all die according to all of the prophets, according to Islam, and we will all be judged on the day of judgment for our deeds and for how we behaved on earth. One set of commandments according to Islam. The 10 commandments of the Bible are also the 10 commandments of the Quran. One cannot go through all of them, but there are so many other details of commandments other than the 10. Most of them would be the same. Be grateful to God, worshiping one God, being nice to one's parents, being trustworthy, patient, sacrifice, peacemaking, bridge building. All are commandments by all the prophets and messengers according to Islam. One set of rituals. The details of the rituals could be different, but according to Islam, all of those prophets ordained or ordered their people to fast. All of them ordered their people to pray. All of them ordered their people to share their wealth with the poor. The most important rituals. All of them ordered their people to do dhikr or meditation. According to Islam, there are so many stories where Ibrahim would have the habit of going in the wilderness to pray. Musa has some references to that in the Quran. Jesus has some of those references in the Quran, and Muhammad too. We have a lot of references of them going out and walking. The practice of walking to reflect on God's creation. One ark, one team, one humanity, as Islam declares about those prophets. Social justice is the central issue according to those prophets and messengers in Islam. Free the slaves, you'll find a lot of references to that in Hadith and in Quran by all of those prophets. All of them would require us to ask the tough questions about specific practices in our societies, practices that would undermine social justice, but also look for or promote practices that would promote social justice. Taking care of the poor is a very central issue in the teachings of the prophets and messengers according to the Quran and according to Hadith, and standing up for the oppressed. The whole story of Surah Al-Baqarah, if you go back and read it in details, of how Musa went and challenged Pharaoh in so many ways because of dictatorship and stand against not only the Israelites, according to the Quran. Musa was a spokesperson for all of those who were oppressed by the system of Egypt. The poor, standing up for the poor. A lot of the verses, if you go back and read, especially Surah Al-Anbiya, the prophets, or Surah Maryam, you have a lot of references to those matters according to Islam. Now, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to see if there are differences. What we have spoken about so far is general idea about who those messengers and prophets are according to Quran and according to Hadith. Obviously, we are talking about the very same people in terms of their agenda, in terms of their call and their cry. However, as I said in the beginning, everyone may have his own details of Sharia and Minhaj. So the path could be different, but the focus is the same. The focus is the same. The path could be different in this regard. Now, Prophet Muhammad, is he really different? Or is he the same? What did he call for? Worship none but God of Abraham and Isaac. You have so many verses in the Quran. And the Quran, remember this, was revealed unto Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, in order so that he may teach people to worship God. So all of those verses in the Quran about Ibrahim, because God wanted Muhammad to actually take the story of Ibrahim and narrate it to his own people. And to tell his people, it is not my intention to come up with a new religion. What I am teaching you is as ancient, as old as Ibrahim and his son. Never different. But he also, as he was trying to do this, he wanted to number one, he claimed that he's not coming up with something new, as profound as Ibrahim's teachings were, the same. But he also wanted to build the bridges with the Jews and the Christians, Ahl al-Kitab, the people of the book, who lived in Arabia. So by one call, he was telling Arabs that I am calling you to the same call of all of those prophets. Number two, I'm not coming up with something new. Number three, by becoming Muslims, you can claim that you are as rooted in history as anyone could be. But also building bridges with others, with one single call. You have heard me before talking about these three principles that govern Islam. And 2 hours ago, if you are on my Facebook, you have already seen my DVD that I put on my Facebook 2 hours ago. You saw that, Angela, you are all the first one to respond. lecture given in Qatar, where I focus on these three principles. Very important that Prophet Muhammad really focused a lot on in the Quran and Hadith. No more tribal wars for money or materialism. No more dehumanization of women. People are equal before God and the law. I believe that Prophet Muhammad was sort of, what's the right term? Went more deeper into the issue of women than Musa and Jesus according to the Quran. I mean, there are references in the Quran and Hadith material to Jesus and Musa and Moses speaking about women and women's issues. But I believe if you read the verses, but if you read the Hadiths and put them together, you'll find much more data about Muhammad's, peace be with him, focus on women more than the Hadiths and ayahs attributed to Jesus or Moses, both, when it comes to the issue of women. I believe that this was most likely #1 social issue for Prophet Muhammad, without any doubt. Without any doubt. People are equal before God and must be equal before the law. This seemed to be sort of one of the well-focused on the principles according to Prophet Muhammad of Islam. Like his brothers, Prophet Muhammad faced tough times. Muhammad's followers were being persecuted for their beliefs in Mecca. Muhammad got tired of it, and when he received sort of the allowance, the permission from God to travel, he did leave Mecca and went on to Medina. So there were 13 years of persecution of his own followers and people being killed before his own eyes. He was prohibited from speaking against idol worshippers in Arabia. He was insulted on a daily basis, yet continued to pray for those who insulted him. We have the story of Taif, the very well-known story, when they stoned him because he went and put its own people to God. They rejected him, they stoned him, and on his way out of Medina, he did his only prayer, لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يُخْرِجَ مِنْ أَصْلَابِهِمْ مَنْ يُوَحِّدُ اللَّهَ. He prayed for the day to come when the followers, or the offsprings, or the children, or the grandchildren of the city of Taif will follow God. Yes, the parents do not want to follow God. It's okay. Inshallah, one day their children will follow God and will become Muslims. He was able and could have done something other than that, but he took the path of prayer for them and peace. He looked for home other than Mecca to preach and live Islam freely. Like his brothers, Muhammad left his own home and went out. Muhammad had to flee during the night. I would not say that Moses left his food during the night. Some people would say that, but not all. Mecca started planning attacks on Muslims and allied with pagan tribes to attack and kill the Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad focused on the building of the new emerging community of faith. Now, I want to conclude, so we have more time for questions, answers. I want to go also through some of the verses in the Quran. That is, all of those things that I have mentioned about Prophet Muhammad, about those prophets, is why we love him and we love them. For us Muslims, these people are our role model, are our example, and our resource and source on how we can love God and follow God and be righteous. So we look up to them, for example. Through them, we learn how best to live our lives. Through them, we learn how to best be in touch with God. Through them, we learn how to best build the bridges and make friends as they have. Through them, we learn how to promote justice and peace in this world. So for us, they are not divine. They are completely human. But as they were able to do this, why not us? So they become our role model and our example. For us Muslims, the prophets were the manifestation of wisdom, love, compassion, mercy, goodness and kindness, generosity and patience. If you read the Quran, you have tons of those stories of patience, of generosity, of goodness, of kindness, of mercy, of compassion, of love, and of wisdom. How they lived their life, they spent their lives praying, whether it was Prophet Muhammad or it was the prophets and messengers. They spent their time reflecting on God. I have some mistakes here. They held themselves accountable to higher standards and to self-evaluation. That's how Muhammad did it. That's how God did it. They visited the sick. They reached out to the poor. They never criticized someone for a mistake publicly. Prophet Muhammad and Jesus, as I said earlier, there are a lot of narratives, especially hadith material about Jesus and about Muhammad. Every time they spoke with wisdom, they spoke little, they spoke with articulation, they spoke with intelligence, they spoke the truth. They captured the hearts of the friends and enemies through their way of speech and behavior. When it comes to Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, I like to mention some of those things that he himself said in light of what we have said so far. Your blood, your property, and your honor are sacred to you all, like the sacredness of your holy days and places. So do not turn to disbelief after me by striking the necks of each other. So according to Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, murder is equal to disbelief, Where in the mind of so many people, disbelief is a theological issue. For Muhammad, it was a behavioral issue. It's a moral issue. In other words, you know them by their fruits. And our fruits, which means what comes out of us, should speak for who we are. Should speak for who we are. And I hope that statement challenges us Muslims to become the best representatives of our own faith and our religion. Do you want to read this statement, Nazir?
O people, surely your Lord is one, your father and mother are the same. From Adam and Eve did you originate, and they are from dust. No Arab is superior to a non-Arab or vice versa. No white is superior to a black man.
Show respect to our elders, and does not show mercy to our youngsters, and does not respect the educators amongst my community is not of us.
No person shall be sent to paradise or hell until he is asked about his life and how he lived it, and about his knowledge and what he did with it, and about his wealth, how he acquired it and how he spent it, and about his body, how he worn it out.
There are 4 habits which if found in a person, then she is a perfect hypocrite. 1. Who cares not for the trust with which he is entrusted. 2. Who lies when talks. 3. Who breaks a promise he has made. And 4. When dislikes a person, he transgresses against him.
So what we have been reading is things the Prophet Muhammad said. Now, when it comes to speaking of God, you have these references to God that you have in all the references of the prophets. I'm not going to go much into this. I really want to finish, and we want to do some reading here. Can you turn the lights on, please? Who's going to read for me? Who is going to do some reading for me? Who's going to do some reading for me? Who's going to volunteer? I volunteer you. If you won't volunteer, I will volunteer you. If you don't volunteer, I will volunteer you. Let's read from here, 16. Yeah, keep reading. I'm going to stop you at certain moments, but go ahead.
So this is Surah Maryam, verse 16. And mention, O Muhammad, in the book, the story of Mary, when she withdrew from her family to a place towards the east, and she took in seclusion from them the screen. Then we sent to her our angel, Gabriel, and he represented himself to her as a well-proportioned man. She said,
now, if you remember, you see that the chapter started with wadhkur, and remember, or take mention of. Why would that be a part of the Quran? Remember that the Prophet had a lot of difficulties in his life. And it is always helpful when you are told you are not the only one to go through this path. So God is telling Muhammad in the Quran that you are not the first one to go through these tough moments. And you're not the first one and the only one to call to me, unto me. For people to come towards me, others have done this. So he mentions this example, the story of Mary here. In another surah he would mention Ibrahim, in another surah Jesus, or Moses. So this idea of wadhkur, and he mentioned, remember. And I say this to you, my friends. Every time you go through a tough experience, remember you are not alone in it. Others are facing the very same thing. That could help. Sometimes it does. You're not alone in it. Yes.
She said, indeed I seek refuge in the most merciful from you. So leave me if you should be fearing of Allah. He said, I am only the messenger of your Lord to give you the news of a pure boy. She said, how can I have a boy while no man has touched me and I have not been unchaste? He said, thus it will be. Your Lord says it is easy.
So this is a dialogue between Mary and the angel. And what she said now, how can I have a baby when no human being has touched me? This becomes a base for a moral issue in Islam. That relationship between men and women has to be only in a marital relationship. Yes.
He said, thus it will be. Your Lord says it is easy for me, and we will make him a sign to the people and a mercy from us. And it is a matter already decreed. So she conceived him, and she withdrew from him to a remote place. And the pains of childbirth drove her to the trunk of a palm tree. She said, oh, I wish I had died before this and was oblivious and was in oblivion forgotten.
So this is a description of Mary the human. Mary the human. Mary was not God, she was not divine, she was a human being. And human beings do have experience with God. This is a moment of true spiritual experience with the divine, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any and every one of you could go through that experience, could have that experience. But to get there, you have to have been ready for it. So we will not do that. But if we had started from the beginning of the surah, Mary was born to righteous parents. That's number one. Number two, Mary grew up righteous in the temple. Mary grew up learning about God, making dhikr. Mary grew up eating the right food, living the right life. So her upbringing prepared her to have that divine experience, or experience with the divine side. What does this mean for you and for me? We have to work on ourselves to get there. If you have children, you need to work on them to get there. When you get there yourself, you have to work on yourself. You have to get yourself to that moment of purity. Can you do it? Yes, you can. Don't belittle yourself. But you need to work on yourself. Yes.
But he called her from below her. Do not grieve. Your Lord has provided beneath you a stream, and shake toward you the trunk of the palm tree.
In a moment of despair, in a moment of fear, moments we all go through, we need support. We need a message. We need God. That's what they're talking about.
It will drop upon you ripe, fresh dates. So eat and drink and be contented. And if you see from among humanity anyone, say, indeed, I have vowed to the most merciful abstention, so I will not speak today to any man.
Preparing here for the upcoming challenge. Now this woman who has never been married, again, who has not been married, no husband in her life, no man in her life, no man has touched her, and overnight she comes home with a baby in her hand. Either she kidnapped him, and we need to know what really happened to return the child to his parents, or you have been in a relationship, and this is against the teachings of the temple. So she's up to a big challenge. You need to be ready for the challenge when it happens.
Then she brought him to her people, carrying him. They said, O Mary, you have certainly done a thing unprecedented. O sister of Aaron, your father was not a man of evil, nor was your mother unchaste.
Sister of Aaron, the Quran is corrupted. It is wrong. How can she be a sister of Aaron? Aaron, the brother of Moses, died thousands of years earlier. What are we talking about? Is the Quran really wrong? Or what? Nazir, what do you think? So what is it? What's going on? I know it's not. What's going on? I just wanted to get you on your toes. Yes? What do you think is going on here?
It has to do with Arabic. It's a phrase.
What is it?
It means that she has a metaphorical kinship to Aaron.
Exactly. She's been reminded of the tradition to which she belonged. She belonged to a tradition, to a religion, to a faith where you only produce children from a marital relationship. So she's been reminded of the tradition, but choosing Aaron as an example. That's number one. Number two, Aaron was known for his hikmah, for his wisdom. He was always a hakim. Okay? So she's being reminded that you come from a tradition where you only act with wisdom, and this is not an act of wisdom.
So she pointed to him. They said, how can you speak to one who is in the cradle of a child? Jesus said, indeed, I am the servant of God. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet. And he has made me blessed wherever I am, and has enjoined upon me prayer and zakah as long as they remain alive.
So this is a miracle that you find in the Quran, you don't find in the Bible. A miracle of you speaking with hours old. with our own, a miracle that you will not find anywhere else. But let's go back and read what he says.
Indeed, I am a servant of Allah. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet. And he has made me blessed wherever I am, and has enjoined me and has enjoined upon me prayer and zakah.
So again, enjoined on me prayer, salah, and the taking care of the poor, zakah, and
made me dutiful to my mother.
And made me good, respectful to my parents.
And he has not made me a wretched tyrant.
So did not make me a miserable, terrifying, hated in my behavior. I was always a manifestation of goodness, a good, moral, loved human being. This is something that comes out in the beginning of the surah, speaking about whom? About Yahya, about Prophet John, about Yahya, the very same stuff. So you have the same descriptions about John, you have the same description about Mary. Later in Hadith, you have the same description about Muhammad and about Musa alayhi salam. It's a very important characteristics of righteousness. Say them again.
Indeed, and he has made me blessed wherever I am, and has enjoined upon me prayer and charity. Prayer and zakah, as long as I remain alive.
Zakah is this concept of charity that you give the poor.
And made me dutiful to my mother.
Being respectful to my parents, to our parents.
And has not made me a tyrant.
Okay. Okay, let's stop here for the sake of time. No, wait a minute. Otherwise, we'll just and finish with this. So let's do this. Let's read this. Let's read 33.
And peace is on me the day...
Now listen to this verse. It's one important verse.
And peace is on me the day I was born, and the day I will die, and the day I am raised alive.
Very important verse. Up to now, the story of Jesus is okay for a Christian to accept. But when it comes to this verse, they would have to debate it. Why? Because the Quran says here, and peace be unto me, Jesus speaking, the day I was born, and it was a peaceful birth, no problem.
The day I will die.
The day I will die. So according to this specific verse, Jesus' death would have to be peaceful death. It is an indirect confrontation, a very indirect rejection of the Christian narrative that Jesus was crucified.
And the day I am raised alive.
And the day I will be raised alive. But this is referring to Jesus coming back at the end of time to bring about peace to earth. Let's do this.
Indeed it is we who will inherit the earth, and whoever is on it, and to us they will be returned.
So after 3-4 stories, the verse says at the end of the time, you will all die. Whether you are Jew, Christian, or Muslim, whether you believe in this or believe in that, you will all die, and I, God, shall inherit the earth. So what is the narrative here? What is the Quran saying? The earth will come to me, so don't fight over it. Number 2, since you are coming back to me, I'm going to be asking you not about the earth, but rather about what you did on the earth. Very important story with which the story finishes or ends. Then after that, it goes through Ibrahim. We'll read it and we will finish. 8 or 8:30? Stop, you see, well, this man is really going after me.
1 minute.
I have to fire him.
And mentioned in the book the story of Abraham. Indeed, he was a man of truth and a prophet. Mentioned when he said to his father, "Oh my father."
Oh my beloved father. It's not in the translation. It's not a good translation.
Oh my beloved
The
father.
abati in Arabic means beloved father.
Why do you worship that which is not here and does not see and will not benefit you at all? Oh my beloved father, indeed there has come to me of knowledge that which has not come to you. So follow me. I will guide you to an even path.
So here you have this amazing prophet who obviously wants to make his father uncomfortable. He's challenging him in his belief and in his practice. But he's not challenging him violently. He's challenging him with respect. Oh, my beloved father, how can you do that? How can you worship the sun? How can you worship the moon? How can you worship idols? Can you think about, can we just talk about it? He never disassociated from himself from his father. Because I love you, I'm asking that question. No, honestly, I mean, you have children, some of you have children. That's the kind of language you use with your child if you want your child to listen to you. That language of love.
O my beloved Father, do not worship Satan. Indeed, Satan has ever been to the most merciful disobedient. O my beloved Father, indeed I feared that there will touch you a punishment from the most merciful, so you would be to Satan a companion.
So because I care about your future and where you are heading, only because I care.
His father said, have you no desire for my gods, O Abraham? If you do not desist, I will surely stone you.
Imagine the son and his love and the father and his aggressiveness.
So avoid me a prolonged time. Abraham said, peace will be upon you.
Again, he